Wireless Infrastructure Association, also known as WIA, represents the businesses that develop, build, own, and operate the nation's wireless infrastructure. Through public affairs and advocacy efforts on local, state, and federal levels, WIA works to support the widespread deployment of wireless infrastructure in order to enable wireless broadband everywhere. How does the US rate compared to other countries? I'm curious. On this episode of Connected with Lori, I'm going to be joined by Jonathan Adelstein, President and CEO of WIA. I'm excited to find out what's in our future of technology. I'm your host, Lori Caruso, and welcome to Connected with Lori. Hey, Jonathan, how are you, my friend? I am so happy to have you on the show.
Lori, it's great to be here. I'm really missing seeing everybody in person, but it's good to see you and virtually.
It's good to see you too virtually. I know last time I saw you, I want to say it was in New York City. I don't know, it was one of our shows, one of the shows out there, but it's been a long time, hasn't it?
For everybody, we got to get everybody back together again. I think we're almost ready to do that.
We are almost ready to do it. I know I'm ready. I'm totally ready. I can't wait to see you guys. So, Jonathan, tell us a little bit about the importance of WIA and what you're doing today to help our telecommunications industry. And I appreciate you, by the way, because it's such a large job you and your team have.
Well, there is a lot going on in Washington now with infrastructure. Every day we hear it in the news about the bill. And of course, the Biden administration is talking about $100 billion for broadband, and the Republicans have announced a $65 billion alternative. Either way, split the difference. We're in 80 billion range. That's pretty good. We've never seen that kind of an influx of money into our industry, and it could change the market. And we have to be very careful about how that's done. I'm concerned a little bit about the way things are going, and we're fighting hard to make sure that the wireless infrastructure industry benefits from that and the money goes where it really belongs. Because if the money goes to the right place, wireless infrastructure benefits. That means real infrastructure is being built. But if there's inappropriate ways that they design it, it really could get very problematical for our industry and for the people, the consumers that could benefit from it.
Absolutely. So I know you have a firsthand view, obviously, at what this looks like. When Congress releases something, I'm assuming you're probably all over it. Talk to us a little bit about your role and how you play that part for us with the government.
Well, we're sort of the lobbying arm of the wireless infrastructure industry. So we advocate in Washington, we advocate in the states, and we've gotten over 30 states to pass laws to, for example, expedite the deployment of wireless infrastructure. And in Washington, we've gotten the FCC to take actions on our behalf to smooth the deployment of infrastructure and co-location on existing sites. And, Congress is our bailiwick. I worked in the Senate for 15 years. And as a matter of fact, I worked in the Obama administration when we last had a stimulus package getting broadband out to rural America. So I'm quite familiar with how that works. We had $2 billion. We thought was a lot of money at the Rural Utility Service, which I ran. And now they're talking about, like I say, 65 to 100 billion, just dwarfing what we did back then. I mean, this is enough money to change the market itself. And right now, Lori, I'm really concerned because 5G isn't even included in the House bill. If you read the House bill, it basically says you have to have 100 megabits up and 100 megabits down, and 5G can't do that. So imagine $100 billion going out the door and not a dime for 5G. I've got my work cut out for me to make sure that doesn't end up in the final bill. We need to have 5G included. I mean, we're a much more cost-effective way to get broadband out than to have to go through, fiber to every premise in the country.
Yeah. And, obviously, and I'm assuming that the reason why we're seeing so much money come to the table here is because they realized with the pandemic that people don't have broadband at their homes because they're homeschooling now, and they're not necessarily in the office, in the city. They're at their house an hour away, and they're realizing, oh my gosh, we definitely have an infrastructure issue. But you're right. We also have to build our technology forward for future, for 5G and beyond. And if that doesn't encapsulate that 5G piece or portion, what do we do?
Well, we're working on the Senate to make sure they include it, but you're exactly right. I mean, there's always been a recognition of how important broadband is, but never has it been so underscored as it was by the pandemic. So yes, I mean, they're going to throw money at this thing, but they need to target that so it goes to the right place. and it's spent efficiently. I mean, these are hard-earned taxpayer dollars we're going to be using. Let's make sure it's done efficiently. And, you could put fiber deeper into the network, which we all agree with, but the idea that you only do fiber and you couldn't do fiber to a tower and then beam out the last mile doesn't make sense. So, we're going to make sure that gets in there. I mean, I think, connected buildings are important in urban areas and in rural areas as well. But if you're a distant rural premise, you don't necessarily need a fiber connection when 5G can do pretty much everything that fiber can, except for that upload speed, which is what they're using to basically keep us out.
Absolutely. So, what's your first step in having them listen? I'm really curious because I know, over the course of years of seeing how the government, does one thing and they try to do another thing and people just don't understand what we do. And you are that person helping us through this. How do you make them listen? How are you getting in front of this?
Great question. I testified in front of Congress and explained the need for technological neutrality. We have a little pack, so I get on the phone. I was on the phone with the senator the other day, and he's a big advocate of the Green New Deal. And I said, you need 5G for all this green effort that you want to do, manufacturing efficiencies, green buildings, et cetera. Why is it in the bill? And he goes, you're right. We got to talk. Call me tomorrow. So I'm on his calendar for a talk very shortly. I mean, so we have a lot of ways to get to them. We meet with them independently. We do hearings. We do letters. We do events. We get in the press. I mean, there's an article recently in Politico that we made sure got run that highlighted this issue. So, there's a multi-pronged effort in Washington. You have to do the publicity effort. You have to do the fundraising effort. You have to do the meetings, the hearings, the white papers. We're putting together white papers on this. It's a major undertaking. When you got $100 billion, though, a few $1 million here and there can actually influence the flow of billions. It's an amazing thing. Usually people find that Washington is a pretty good return on investment for industries to make sure that they're well represented.
Absolutely. When are they going to start announcing and making these decisions? I know we've been talking about it, but do you see it in sight? I mean, is it really going to come to fruition?
They really want to get it done this summer. They don't want to hang it on too long. I mean, they've seen in the past, Biden remembers in the early days of the Obama administration when things dragged on, and he wants to get it done. And with a 50-vote margin in the Senate, to be crass about it, I mean, it's hanging by the heartbeat of every, Democratic senator that lives in a state with a Republican governor, right? Any moment that could disappear. Yep. And so they want to get it done while they have the votes. They want to get it done quickly, but it's a long, drawn out process. And they do want to give the opportunity for bipartisan agreement. So they're going to be working in earnest, I think, over the late spring here and into the summer and trying to wrap it up before August. I'm not sure they'll be able to get that done. It might be an event that takes place in the fall, but they're moving as fast as they can on it.
I've been impressed with what they've been able to do in such a short period of time, with the stimulus packages and, really collecting together as a team. I mean, they've done a lot, I can tell you. So hopefully that will continue. And, I got to ask too, I mean, $100 billion, that's a lot of money, but do you think it's going to be enough?
Well, it probably would be enough. I mean, the private sector invests $30 billion a year, and we've built a network that survived the pandemic and thrived and helped the entire economy stay afloat. So this is a massive infusion. I think it would get a long way toward connecting every American if the money's used right. I mean, if they throw it down the tubes and spend $100,000 to get one farm connected by having a long fiber run, when they could have connected 20 farms with one fiber run to a tower, it won't make it. But if they design it right, and we're going to make sure they do, I think this is going to be enough to really make a difference in terms of rural connectivity.
Well, it's exciting. There's no question seeing what we're seeing today in this industry. But, with that, say the money does obviously get allocated. Now we have so much out there to invest in, but now we might have another issue. Do we have enough people on the street to be able to spend that money to be able to build the infrastructure like they want us to?
Well, I'm not sure we do. We really need, I think, to get more people trained to do this work. And we want to make sure that we have people that can do the in-building work as well. We have established a CBRS courses for CBRS fundamentals, for example, and doing an apprenticeship on in-building technicians. we need to set up apprenticeship programs. We need to train a lot more people to get this job done. And, I'm afraid, Lori, that we haven't gotten all the training that we need to get the workforce in place, if especially we're going to be building so much at once. At the same time we're building all these systems, we're also going to be seeing this $100 billion potential infusion into our industry. So Congress has got to make sure that they provide, the jobs along with the job training, so that we actually have people ready to do the work that Congress is asking us to do.
Well, yeah, and you bring up a great point. I mean, like in any industry, if it's quick to come to fruition and you need workers out there, you're throwing them into these positions and telling them, quick, just learn it, hands-on experience, just learn it. But this infrastructure piece, it's technical. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm always talking about how important it is to get it right and get it right the first time.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of work being done that isn't always, what people expected, or they're not optimizing the networks because, you hire, two Chucks in a truck and you get somebody coming in that was never trained. It might be the lowest bid, but it might not work. And we're seeing that happen quite a bit. So we want to raise the floor of quality in terms of the whole workforce so that the job gets done right. And I think people that own buildings too could get a little training in the fundamentals so that when they talk to somebody, they know what they're talking about. And our CBRS fundamentals course is something that through the Telecommunications Education Center we have at WIA, people can benefit from knowing the lay of the land. And the people that are actually installing these networks sometimes never had that course either. They're just saying, here, go do this. And they're never taught the environment that they're operating in. So we're trying to change all that. We're creating apprenticeships like other industries have done to make sure that people are given a systematic training and apprenticeship and mentoring so they can really develop in their career. And we've got, 50 employers have signed up for that. The really best quality employers in the business. So we're going to give people, I think, a better option, give people employers and workers that really know what they're doing, even more than they do today. I mean, there are ones that know what they're doing, but we need to make sure everybody does. We raise this sort of standard across the industry.
Yeah, and I have to commend you guys. I mean, the training that you have at WIA is extensive. I mean, it's really hands-on. And, maybe you can talk a little bit more about some of the other training courses that you offer and what you guys can actually do to help benefit those people out there looking to get into our industry.
Well, for there's sort of training for companies and there's training for employers. Like for employers, we have this whole apprenticeship program they can join called Telecommunications Industry Registered Apprenticeship Program, or TIRAP. They can get all kinds of help from us to set that up, make that work. We give them $10,000 incentive funding, to get started. So they don't have to, there's no charge for doing it. And that gives them a better tool for recruiting and retaining workers. And for the building owner or somebody who's trying to learn and shop around, be an educated consumer, we offer 5G fundamentals and CBRS fundamentals. And for the people that are actually going to install the networks, we actually, with Federated Wireless, developed a training program, a certified professional installer credential that you can get through us, designed by Federated to be able to install this. And that's required to be a CBRS installer. But even if you're not doing it yourself, it's a pretty helpful thing to do if you're planning to do a major venue where you're going to put CBRS in there as a private network. It is a good background to have.
It is a good background to have for sure. So we're getting, talking about this funding piece. And, when they finally do decide, okay, we're going to, allocate this money out there in August, let's say, or give or take whatever time frame it is. Do we know how people are going to be able to get to that money? Are we going to be able to access it easily? Is it something that they're just going to sign up with? And are you guys going to have any role in helping people do so?
It's a great question. Along with the $100 billion for broadband, there's a $48 billion workforce development section, a whole nother section of the bill. And as your lobbyist in Washington, we're trying to make sure 5G is sort of prioritized in that list, because if they're going to spend that money on this side of the bill, somebody's got to remind them on the other side. It's a whole different bunch of committees that 5G is a priority, because if you don't get the people trained and we don't get 5G, the Chinese will beat us in the race to 5G. And we won't get that money spent efficiently. So we're going to make sure that that money is available. What we're asking for and what we hope to get is money for employers basically to offset their training costs. So if it costs you $15,000 to put a person through the apprenticeship program, all the training, all the equipment, it might be $15,000 you're spending anyway on your regular program. That's roughly what it costs to train somebody up. You can get the federal government to pay for that. As you bring new people in, offload some of those costs to the federal government, and we'll be better off. So that's what I'm trying to get done in that bill. And I think that'll go through the Department of Labor. It'll go through apprenticeship. You have to have an apprenticeship program to get that money. But a lot of people have training programs anyway. They can recast them as apprenticeships, and they will be able to get that funding. But it will take a while to get all those pieces in place.
Really well, no question. So, and you bring up a really great point too, is that these apprenticeships that, you need to have people working well with and understand the trades. I work with an organization called Bring Back the Trades. And when I started learning more about it, I'm like, gosh, electrical contractors, they're retiring. They're not out there anymore. There's no one to backfill. So not only is it a training issue, but it's also a person issue. You have to have the people in order to fill those spots. How, as an industry, are we trying to make it wow factor so people do come in and want to work in this industry?
That's a great question. It's been identified by the FCC's working group on workforce development that we need to recruit people. A great recruiting tool is apprenticeships. If you tell somebody, hey, if you come here, we're going to mentor you, we're going to train you, we're going to give you a career pathway to grow your career, they're more likely to join. There's documented evidence of this. And once you get them in, if you have an apprenticeship and you take care of the workers that way, then you have the more likely prospect of retaining them. So it helps with recruitment and retention, but we need to get the word out there. It's amazing how few people know about our industry. It's kind of catch as catch can. Another way to do what we call pre-apprenticeship is we're getting schools. We've set up programs in 5 schools. NATE has established some programs in schools so that we get kids in and trained on, again, somebody else's dime. Why not have people come out of a coursework where we've helped design it as industry, and they then have gone through that course and they come into our industry actually having a background, actually understanding what radio frequency means and what different frequencies operate in different ways in terms of how they work in building, outside of building, so that they can deal with the issues they find when they get out in the field. And there's more and more antennas closer and closer to the end user, and they've got to figure out how to manage through the interference that can cause. So we're doing a lot to do this. It's a long lead item, to make our industry sexy again, to make people think we want to join, the wireless industry. They all play with their little devices, but they don't think about all the work that goes into making them, function.
Yes, it's important. And so I also want to find out too, maybe after this break, where we stand and where we compare against the other countries out there. Obviously we're doing what we need to do to get there, right? We're getting the money, we're trying to train the people, we're trying to get the people, but what's next for us and what's in store for that part? Anyways, Jonathan, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after these messages. Global neutral host communications infrastructure provider, BAI Communications team of engineering experts and innovators design and build connectivity solutions to help connect people, enrich communities, and advance economies. BAI's 5G neutral host infrastructure is an effective way for mobile network operators, municipalities, and other enterprises to respond to the growing demand for strong networks and reliable mobile coverage across metropolitan and regional communities. To learn more about how BAI is helping organizations deliver the next wave of connectivity solutions, visit our website at baicommunications.com. Welcome back to Connected with Lori. I am so excited to have my guest here, Jonathan Adelstein from WIA. Jonathan, before the break, we started to talk a little bit about how the U.S. is doing as we rate with technology with other countries. And I know you had mentioned China. I hear China a lot. Where do we stand? What does it look like for us? Are we number one?
Well, the Chinese are really on a tear on this. They've made it their government priority to win, and their company, Huawei, is really producing very cheap equipment, partly because they stole a lot of their IP from us, so they've got a lot of advantages. It's a command economy, and usually a command economy doesn't allocate resources well. But occasionally, if it picks the right spot and they picked 5G, it might actually be able to perform. I mean, when it comes to siting, they don't have to worry about getting all kinds of approvals and getting strung up before they can put up an antenna. When it comes to training, they don't, ask permission. They tell kids, you're going to go into becoming a small cell tech. You're going to be climbing towers. You're going to be installing fiber. No problem. They'll meet their need. When it comes to a spectrum, they quickly lay it out there and they get that done. So, I mean, they really can run circles around us, and we need to fight hard because we have the advantage of being innovative and being usually first and having a lot of capital. But we need to get going on this. I mean, they've got their own domestic equipment manufacturer that's cranking out cheap equipment, subsidizing it around the world. It's not playing fair, so we need cooperation from the government. We need their help in getting workers trained. We need their help in getting the spectrum we need. We need to get these siting reforms that have been so helpfully put in place under the Pi administration to stay in place so we can continue to build these networks quickly and not get caught up if we want to win the race to 5G.
Win the race to 5G. And it's too bad. I mean, with everything, when you have to, deploy such large networks, you need a team to do it. You can't be fighting and trying to say, I want to get there first. This is a race. How do we do it together? I mean, it's a global strategy, right? Shouldn't it look like a global strategy? People are coming over here to the US and we're going to China. We want it to all work, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a global competition because the first ones that get 5G get a lot of the jobs that come with it. It's not just the 5G jobs. We're predicted to create 4.5 million jobs. Our little industry, not just in our industry, but in every industry. You think about Uber wouldn't exist without 4G. You think about the entire app economy, all the video that wouldn't exist without 4G is literally trillions in economic development. We don't want that going to China. We want that here. We want to win the race to 5G just like we did 4G so that all those apps get developed here in the United States and not overseas. So it is a bit of a competition.
It is a competition. There's no question when you put it like that. That is for sure. We're going to win. We want to make sure that that's the case. So Jonathan, talk to us also. What are some other trends that are going to impact the wireless infrastructure industry that you're seeing maybe for future next year, year after?
Well, they're building out the C-band. It's causing a lot of good work to happen. They spent a lot of money on C-band. There was some concern that they wouldn't have anything left to actually, build with it. But it seems that they are putting the CapEx out there to use C-band, and that'll provide, I think, quicker 5G. I mean, we're seeing, T-Mobile consolidate what it's done in its merger, and they're really in a good position in terms of spectrum now. I think the market's a little more rational with 3 actors. You've got Dish coming in with a 4th competitor potentially doing 5G across the country in a brand new system using fresh equipment, and it's a whole new greenfield build we've never seen before. That it wasn't sort of patched together from different technologies that preceded it because they're building it from scratch, 5G right at the beginning. So it's really an exciting time. I mean, 4 different companies are all firing at the same time to build out their networks, which we rarely see in this industry. And on top of that, you got CBRS being built out. So really a very good time to be in the wireless infrastructure industry.
No question. Yeah. And you bring up a good point too. Dish. I have definitely been seeing a lot of movement with them, just from what they're doing, for hiring and, they're coming into Las Vegas and they've got a lot of story to tell. I'm pretty impressed and intrigued because it's been a short period of time.
Yeah, they are there for real. They hired Dave Mayo, who used to be over at T-Mobile, really was a member of the board of ours, knows what he's doing. I mean, they're serious. Don't underestimate Charlie Ergen. He's ready to build and he's putting together the pieces to get that done. And we're hearing that things are starting to happen. So that's just a big add to everybody in infrastructure. If you own infrastructure today, that you're going to get a new tenant, and for consumers, a new option. So it's kind of exciting to see a new entrant in here, even though, we lost Sprint, which it wasn't really investing very much. So them under T-Mobile is a real powerhouse. So a lot of dynamic change and growth and competition in the wireless space.
So you think we're in a good position with the 3 carriers that we have, with maybe Dish coming in? You see, from a competitive standpoint, it's going to be a positive for us?
Yeah, they're all saying they're going to build out. T-Mobile's required to build out under the merger agreement that they did, and the other carriers are saying they're going to keep pace. So it looks like we really might get 5G built out very widely across the country fairly quickly. We got to make sure that business case follows. I mean, part of the issue is, does 5G really create that much additional revenue, or is it just a competitive issue driving it? There aren't a lot of apps yet that are of interest to anybody. Like 4G, when we first built it, they did come because the apps came and everybody had to have 4G. We haven't seen that in 5G yet. So, I mean, that's the one thing we really need to sort of complete the circle here, is more than just, competitive pressures, but having this being driven by real apps that people want. And I think that most of those are going to come in the enterprise space, where you have, the ability for many more devices on the network, IoT. You have the ability to do much lower latency, so it opens up new possibilities. But we need to see those at scale to continue to drive deployment any faster. Otherwise, we're continuing to see steady deployment based on competitive trends. But if there is a must-have for consumers or enterprise, it could speed things up even more.
Well, I can say it's exciting, this evolving technology that we continue to see moving at the speed of light, which I always say. And it's so much fun to see it and be in the industry to see where it goes. Very exciting. I'm curious, from a pandemic perspective, I mean, we do talk about that, and unfortunately, we're still in it. Do you see a setback as a result of progress here, as a result of this pandemic?
Well, at first there was some hiccups. We worked through those with getting siting approval from municipalities. They were going home like everybody else, and they were slowing down. It was variable. Some were moving faster if they already had online systems, but some had to move everything online, move people home. We've kind of worked through that now, and things have sped up. The workforce issues we had early on, make sure everybody is safe out there. Working outdoors is a lot safer than working indoors. And we had to take a lot of precautions to make sure that the workforce was safe. But I think we're cooking with gas now. Things are moving ahead. And as you pointed out earlier, I mean, the people now recognize the indispensable nature of broadband even more than they did. I mean, people kind of recognize it, but literally think back 20 years ago, if we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have any of this technology, our economy would have completely collapsed. Either that, or we would have all had to, face the death penalty to go to the office. So, the appreciation for what we've done as an industry, and our network's held up, is at an all-time high. And we just have to make sure we channel that right, that the investments in our industry lead to the right deployment, and making sure that 5G is a part of that.
And you brought up a really great point. We always look at the negatives. That is such a great positive. You're absolutely right. Where would we have been if this was 20 years ago from a technology perspective? We're making it happen. I'm in New Hampshire and I'm on Zoom. It's working, right?
Even in New York City, you can stay in New York and you'd be nowhere if you didn't have broadband and 4G and mobility that it provided. So yeah, we upheld the entire economy. I don't think we get full gratitude for the role we played, but at least they recognize how important it is, and now they want to invest as a federal government to make sure everybody has access.
I love it. That's fantastic. So another important piece, we're getting into these virtual shows. ConnectX is one of your largest shows, and it's how you guys deliver what you do every day. I'm curious, talk to me a little bit about the virtual show. What are you going to do? Are we going to be in person soon at this show? I hope so.
We are planning to be in person. I think we will. As a matter of fact, we had to move it back from Boston in August to Orlando in October. So it's our October 4th to 7th in Orlando. It is the biggest event in the wireless infrastructure industry. People are all coming, but what I'm hearing is that if they can come, they will, because people are vaxxed up. They're anxious to see their friends they haven't seen in years. I think it's going to be an incredible turnout. I mean, sales are going great for exhibits and for sponsorships. I mean, people really want to get back together again. And I think we're really well timed that we're going to be up in Boston, in the fall to make sure that we're safe, give us a little bit more room from August. We want to make sure give ourselves another couple months for everything to settle down. And of course, in Florida, they don't have any restrictions, so we're pretty safe that we can do it. We're going to do it with all the proper precautions, of course. But get vaxxed, come to Orlando in October and see people you haven't seen in a long time. We'll have great music. We'll have parties. We'll have all the industry there together, the leaders. It's really the time that the industry gets together. It's kind of like a family reunion for the wireless infrastructure industry, when everybody can get work done in 3 days. It would take you weeks if you were trying to do it piecemeal.
I always enjoy going to your show. It is without question one of the best shows out there. And boy, we do have fun, don't we?
Yeah. But yeah, we do. And you said virtual. We are doing some virtual events. We've been doing a series of virtual events, and we have the next one is the Supplier Diversity Summit on May 18th and 19th, where we're getting diverse suppliers together and talking about workforce, all access workforce. So if you're interested in workforce development and interested in supplier diversity, from 10 to 12:30 each day, May 18th and 19th, we have a virtual ConnectX series. And then another one that'd be real interest to your listeners is the Private Network Summit. We're doing virtually on June 22nd and 23rd. It'll cover CBRS use cases and how private networks have been successfully utilizing CBRS. So I think that'll be a lot of interest to people too, right after they have the chance to see the Connected show that you're doing.
Well, I love it. You guys are doing amazing work out there. I say it all the time. You are our connection to make it happen. So thank you, Jonathan Adelstein, for all you do and your team. All you guys, I know you're working hard. We really appreciate you. And
thanks for having me, Lori.
Thanks so much for being on the show. We will definitely see you in October.
See you there. See you in Orlando.
Thanks, Jonathan. Take care. Interested in being part of our show or advertising on our podcast? Contact us at info@fifthgenmedia.com for more information. We'd love to be a part of your success.